The acid green numbers on the ATM flickered $34 before the screen spat her card out. Megan's hand hovered, palms sweaty, over the scratched plastic, as if expecting more, another bill, some miracle, but nothing came. The evening traffic on Central Avenue screamed past, and the fluorescent glow from the cheap motel next door painted the sidewalk sickly. Across the street, Megan's car, packed to the gills with everything she owned, 2 suitcases, a battered guitar, and a box of books, waited like the last island before sinking. It could be worse, she told herself, and almost believed it until her phone buzzed with a message from her sister. "They took everything, Meg, even Dad's watch. They say you get the house. That dump." There was a laughing emoji at the end. Megan exhaled, pressing her temple to the cool glass of the phone. Her father's death after a long, ugly hospital fight had left his 2 daughters raw and exposed. But the family lawyer's voice during the funeral reception had been slick with condolences and finality. "Your uncle and aunt being next of kin got almost everything. Except, the house in Sedillo, that's now yours, Megan." He said it like an apology. Sedillo was an hour outside Albuquerque. The house had been a punchline for decades, years of rumors about faulty wiring, water damage, rattlesnakes under the floorboards. She remembered the wild walnut tree that dropped black husks onto the porch, staining the paint. Mostly, she remembered her Uncle Matthew's sneer, "Let the artist find her muse in the ruins. Maybe she'll paint herself a roof." Now broke, bulldozed by grief, she had nothing else to lose. With no real choice, Megan folded herself into the car's driver's seat, the fabric sticking to her thighs, and pointed herself east onto the I-40 ramp. Her fingers drummed on the steering wheel. Somewhere in the back, tangled with a broken lamp, the skeleton key to the Sedillo house chimed against a coffee can. She had kept that key for years, for reasons she could never justify except maybe one. The house was the only thing her father had ever kept secret from the family. If you've ever watched someone sell your life out from under you and still found the nerve to dig, you'll want to hear what she found next. The dull blue dusk faded as the headlights carved a ribbon east. Megan rolled the window down, letting the desert's warm wind flatten her hair, gritty with dust. Her phone pinged again just as she passed Moriarty, but she let it buzz itself to exhaustion in the cup holder. 70 minutes until Sedillo. The high ridge to the north caught the last copper rays. She hit play on an old mixtape and let the miles dissolve. Flashbacks hid in fragments, not memories exactly but moods. Her father's hand steady on the wheel as he wound down this same highway, Megan in the passenger seat, sullen and 16, refusing to share her headphones. The last Thanksgiving before her mother left, everyone pretending to laugh with the fire alarm chirping for a new battery in the background. And that summer she was 20, when she brought home a girlfriend from school and Matthew had cornered her in the mudroom, voice like gravel. "You want Dad's money, you better act right. He won't leave you spare change if you keep embarrassing him." Megan had laughed, but she'd felt an edge back then, something more than bigotry, a hunger in Matthew's eyes to control everything, to have the last word. The road slithered into scrubland. Lightning forked over the hills. Her low-fuel light came on, and memory yielded to anxiety. This time there was no big sister to fetch her, no father to bail her out. She arrived at the Sedillo house as the last light bled away. The place was as ugly as rumor. Corners sagged, white paint peeled to gray, tall weeds coiling through the porch boards. A battered foreclosure sign leaned in the dirt. Megan killed the engine, heart banging. She unlocked the front door. The air inside was bone-dry and stale, saturated with the smell of dust and old wood. Her footsteps echoed. "Well, it's not haunted," she muttered to herself, voice too loud in the emptiness. She flicked the ancient wall switch, nothing happened. Her phone flashlight made a sickly tunnel across the floor. 10 steps in, her toe struck something. Stubbing and swearing, Megan bent down. A large envelope lay by the baseboard, brown with a red wax seal she didn't recognize. Her name scrawled in angular black ink. Flipping it over, she found a key taped to the back, smaller than the house key, brass ornate. The envelope was thick with something stiff inside, maybe cards, maybe photos. She snapped a picture and texted it to her sister. "Did you know about this?" There was no immediate reply. Megan moved back into the main room, pulse quick. The contents would wait until she was sure no one else was here. She started a scavenger hunt through each shadowed room, phone trembling in her hand. Kitchen, linoleum curling up like a smile, drawers hanging open, checkbook stubs from another era. Pantry empty, back bedroom, floor sloped, closet door ajar. Behind it, a panel nailed shut where her dad had once stored Christmas ornaments. She slid her fingertips along the edge, looking for a catch. Nothing, not yet. Her sister's message finally appeared. "No idea, maybe Dad wanted to make you a scavenger hunt, lol, don't get tetanus." Megan rolled her eyes, but her mind kept returning to the key to the wax-sealed envelope. She sat cross-legged on the floor, drew her switchblade, kept clipped to her jeans pocket, more for the sense of security than any skill, and sliced open the envelope. Inside, 4 index cards, each covered in her father's handwriting. A map sketched on the last card, no address, just lines converging to a box marked root cellar. Megan stared. She didn't remember a root cellar. She rose too fast, struck her head on the closet frame, and felt the skin bloom hot. Clutching the cards and key, she made for the back of the house, giving herself an urgent, whispering pep talk. "You're not afraid, it's just mold and spiderwebs." She flicked her phone light along the south wall until she found a seam in the warped wallpaper. There, a low door barely 2 feet high, partly hidden by a crate of paint cans. Heart pounding, she moved the crate, coughing as the dust billowed. She fumbled the brass key into the lock. It turned with a reluctant click. The small door swung open and cold air poured out, a whisper from someplace untouched. The root cellar steps vanished into black. "Here goes nothing," Megan breathed and descended, phone light shaking. The stone steps gave under her weight, clammy with some invisible moisture. Spiderwebs caught her face. It smelled of minerals, earth, and something chemical. At the bottom, bare brick walls closed on 3 sides, but the right wall jutted in a sharp corner. Megan swept her light, stopping on a tarpaulin bunched in the corner. She stepped closer. Something glinted beneath the tarp, a battered military footlocker stenciled with Brooks in faded black, her dad's surname. She squatted and dragged it forward. The brass padlock yielded instantly to the backpack key. Inside, folders, aged blueprints, and dozens of sealed vials lined up in foam cutouts. A laminated ID badge for Los Alamos Research Associate. Beside it, a leather-bound notebook. Megan's mouth went dry. She stared at the cover and whispered, "What the hell, Dad?" Flipping it open to the first page, she read, "If you're here, Megan, then no one else in the world should ever see the rest of this. Our family's safety depends on it." Her hands shook, the pages swam. She reached for her phone, but there was no signal down here. And on the floor, under the footlocker, was a ring of old keys, and taped to it, a safety deposit box slip with today's date circled. The urgency hit like a knife. She had until tomorrow at noon. A line across the deposit slip read, "Box 417, Sandia First Bank, ownership reverts at 12:00 p.m. She shot to her feet, closing the locker hastily. Each click sounded too loud. Upstairs, the old house groaned as if something heavier moved above. Megan froze, then, breathless, she climbed back to the hallway, packing the cards, key, and notebook into her satchel. No time to lose. If anyone was going to steal this, it wasn't going to be her. For a second she hesitated, staring at the battered mailbox by the front door. Years back her father had made her promise, "Don't trust anyone related by blood or marriage with what's down there." Then he'd laughed it off. But the memory edged into focus now. Her Uncle Matthew and Aunt Sherry had always been obsessed with the idea that Brooks Sr. had a patent left unclaimed, some big payday stashed away. This was no payday, this was something else, something powerful enough to hide in the dark for decades. Megan barely had time to register that before her phone buzzed again. This time, it was not her sister. "Matthew, don't touch anything in Sedillo. We're coming tonight. You're not safe alone with what you might find." The words snapped her out of any doubt. She grabbed her keys and ran to the car, slamming the house door shut behind her. The drive back toward Albuquerque was a blur. Her knuckles whitened on the steering wheel as the blueprint spilled out across the seat beside her. The vials rattled in her satchel with every curve and dip in the highway. She caught herself checking the mirrors compulsively, but no headlights followed. In the flat dark beyond the city lights, she interrogated her memory for clues. Dad had worked for labs at Los Alamos, classified stuff. He'd hinted once that he'd helped develop something that was supposed to change the world. Change it for who? Megan had asked him. He'd never answered. She pulled into the parking lot of Sandia First Bank at 8 a.m. just as the neon open sign flickered on. The building hunched on the corner like an old dog, weathered brick, few windows. Megan climbed out, trying to look like she wasn't fleeing a fire. At the front desk inside, a bored clerk eyed her with the appraising look of someone used to denying overdrafts. "I have this," Megan said, holding out the deposit slip. "Box 417, I need access." The clerk checked the date and raised a brow. Megan could tell he was about to say no. "The owner, Brooks, right? You're his daughter, Megan Brooks," she said. "I have his ID right here." She produced the badge from the footlocker. He paused, then buzzed her in. The vault's door resembled a submarine hatch, all levers and dials. Megan followed him to the corridor lined with silver boxes. As he clanked the box free, the clerk muttered, "Rare we see these old accounts activated. Most get bought up in estate auctions." Megan forced a smile. "I guess I'm sentimental." The box was heavier than it looked. Alone now, Megan pried it open on the small table. Inside, stacks of papers, more blueprints, a wad of bills wrapped with a rubber band, and a fist-sized steel cylinder she didn't recognize. Beside it, a typed letter on letterhead bearing her father's name. She started at the money, thousands in 50s and hundreds, more cash than she'd ever held. But it was the letter that magnetized her. She read, lips barely moving. "Megan, if you're reading this, everything else is in motion. The patents in these folders, if properly registered, could make a thief rich, or if released, could destroy several corporations and their leaders. Your uncle and aunt have wanted them for years. The steel canister contains the only working prototype. Do not let it out of your sight. Trust only Henderson. He will know what to do. If Matthew gets hold of this, he'll sell it. Don't let him." She pushed back from the table, chest tight. The word destroy echoed in her mind. A voice behind her made her jump. "Excuse me, miss, are you finished in there?" Megan nodded, almost done. She packed everything as fast as she could, tucking the blueprints into her bag, counting the thick stack of bills, 15,000 by her rough estimate. The cash would buy time, the rest she didn't know yet. The steel canister felt cold and weighty in her hands. Outside, the phone rang. A gravelly voice, almost lost in static. "Megan, it's Henderson. Look for the silver Civic outside the bus depot. 10 minutes. This is about your dad and about Matthew. He's already looking for you." She hesitated. "Where did you get this number?" Silence. Then, "Your father prepared me for this. Trust the root cellar. Don't say more on the phone." The line went dead. Tires squealed as a maroon SUV turned into the lot. Megan ducked behind a pillar, clutching the prototype. Her Uncle Matthew's face flashed through the windshield, a heavy-set man with eyes like burnt coals, jaw locked in anger. She texted Henderson's number. "On my way, they're here." Vaulting over the far side railing, she cut across the parking lot just as Matthew stepped out. He scanned the area, mouth thin, and called, "Megan, stop hiding, I'm only here to help you." Blood pounding, Megan made for the bus depot 2 blocks down. A silver Honda idled at the curb. Behind the wheel, a wiry man in a faded blue blazer signaled with 2 fingers. Megan dove into the passenger seat, slamming the door as the Honda peeled away. "Drive," she barked. "I am, kid, I am," Henderson said, not looking at her. They tore down the frontage road, passing a green Subaru and a pickup emblazoned with university logos. Out the rear window, Megan spotted the SUV weaving in vain across traffic. She exhaled shakily. The canister dug into her thigh. Henderson drove fast but steady, eyes flicking from mirror to windshield. His mouth worked at some private debate. Megan turned, voice low. "What's in this, really?" "A battery prototype, nuclear grade," Henderson replied. "Unstable but clean energy, worth billions if licensed properly, and if the tech's sold to the wrong people, power plants start catching fire." He shot her a wry grin. "Richard hated talking about it, but he said you'd be the one brave enough to decide." Megan tried to focus. "What do I do now? Matthew's chasing me." Henderson's jaw clenched. "We need to get this to State Attorney Harper. She's expecting us. Your dad briefed her years ago, just in case." "He didn't trust me with anything," Megan admitted, anger slipping into her tone. "Wrong, he trusted you with the only thing that matters." They careened off the expressway onto a side street, merging with morning traffic. The city baked in the light. Henderson's voice was a low rumble. "Your uncle will do whatever it takes. He hired muscle yesterday, said you'd be running toward danger, not away." Megan thumbed the prototype. "So what happens if I hand this in?" A siren wailed nearby, making them both jump. Henderson didn't slow. "Matthew will likely claim ownership, say you broke in, say the will was forged. That's why I have the original blueprints and patent forms. Dated, witnessed. We just need to get to Harper by noon." Megan's phone buzzed. This time it was a private number, her Aunt Sherry. "Don't do it, Megan. Listen to your uncle. The house isn't worth what you think. Don't make us." The call dropped, words slicing off. Henderson shot her a look. "Phones can be tracked, turn it off." She did, tucking it into the glove box. As they pulled up to a bland concrete building labeled State District Attorney's Office, Megan felt a tidal wave of fatigue and adrenaline. All her life she'd made excuses for why she never finished things, why art school was enough, why coming home was bad luck. Here now, the choices had teeth. They marched up the cracked sidewalk, Henderson leading, Megan trying not to shake. Inside, the lobby reeked of coffee and air conditioning. A guard checked ID, eyed the steel canister, and waved them through with a grunt. They took the elevator up, Henderson pushing the button twice, an anxious twitch. At the reception, a thin woman with steel-gray hair blinked at their battered appearance. "You're Brooks's daughter," not a question. "I need to see Attorney Harper," Megan said. "Now it's about my father and what he left behind." The woman picked up the phone, murmured. Moments later, a tall woman in a blue suit, Attorney Harper, emerged, eyes sharp, handshake firm. "Come in quickly, Brooks' files are in order." Harper's gaze settled on the canister. "Is that it?" Megan nodded. Henderson passed over the blueprints, the footlocker folder, the badge. Harper scanned quickly, brow furrowed. "Megan, do you know what this implicates?" Harper asked quietly. "Several companies, people at the DOE. If we go public, there'll be blowback." Megan gripped her knees. "My uncle and aunt want to sell this, probably overseas. They tried to strong-arm me out of the house." Harper nodded. "You did the right thing, but we need to act before the noon deadline. Once the deposit box is reclaimed, or worse, if the bank declares it forfeit, the chain of evidence weakens." Henderson added, "Matthew is in town. He's not going to play fair." Harper looked at them both, then leaned into the phone. "I need a police detail on alert. Notify federal liaison and prep a room for immediate statement." Megan tried to gather herself. What happens now? Harper's answer was bracing. "You'll give a statement, then, unless you want protective custody, I suggest lying low. We'll freeze the assets and order an injunction, prevent your uncle from transferring anything." Henderson squeezed Megan's shoulder. "You did your dad proud," he said softly. Shouts broke out in the hallway. Through the glass, Megan saw security hustling up the corridor, followed by Matthew, suit rumpled, wild-eyed, Sherry panting behind him. He pointed straight at Megan. "That's her," he roared. "She stole from the family, she forged the will." A flurry of uniformed officers intervened, blocking the door. Harper turned to Megan. "Don't say a word out there, I'll handle this." Matthew's voice rang clear, slicing through the glass. "That's my patent my brother owed me. She's lying, ask anyone, she's unstable." Harper eased the conference room door closed, her voice icy. "We'll let the law speak for itself, Mr. Brooks." For one spinning second, Megan imagined herself alone on the step, wind punching at her. She found her voice. "Matthew, you always said my only talent was stubbornness. I'm betting you regret that now." Her voice steadied. "Dad left this for me because you would have sold it to anyone." She raised the canister visibly for all to see. Matthew lunged, only to be restrained. "You think they'll believe you? I have lawyers. Sherry, get on the phone now." Sherry's voice was tight, desperate. "Let's just talk, Meg. Don't ruin the whole family over whatever you think you found." Henderson glared. "You had years. Why now? Because you finally realized there was more here than you could steal." Harper's assistant entered, bearing a heavy file. "Preliminary background checks are back. There's a pattern: attempted fraud, shell corporations, offshore transfers." Matthew's face closed into hate. "You set me up, you little liar." Megan, shaking but upright, handed over the prototype and the files to Harper. "My father knew you'd try this," she said quietly. "He never trusted you. He left this to keep people safe, not to make anyone rich." Harper met her gaze. "We'll need you to sign the witness statement, Megan, but for now, we've got enough to act." The police moved in, cuffs snapping shut on Matthew and Sherry. Sherry sobbed, mascara streaking down her face. Matthew spat curses, his boots scuffing the white tile, face mottled dark. Security led them away, and the air rushed out of the room. Megan all but collapsed in the chair, eyes burning. For a moment, the city beyond the window shimmered, electric with promise. 2 weeks later, headlines erupted. Local family exposed in patent theft, attempted sale of experimental prototype thwarted. A subheadline: whistleblower daughter protected in state sweep. Matthew and Sherry were indicted on counts ranging from fraud to attempted espionage. Their assets were frozen, homes seized. The patent, Megan learned, would revert to state and federal investigators for further study. And yet one thing remained: the battered Sedillo house, still technically hers, now free of encumbrances. Neighbors in Sedillo, having watched the for sale sign gather cobwebs for years, buzzed with new respect. "I always thought there was more to her daddy than met the eye," one muttered at the local diner. Henderson visited, coat draped over one arm, bearing a check from the attorney's office, an honorarium for crucial assistance and bravery. Megan blinked at 5 digits on a slip of paper. This is for me." "You earned it," Henderson grinned. "And the city's going to keep an eye on the Brooks place, just in case another family tries their luck." Megan sold the car for parts, paid off the last of her student loans, and began painting again in a sunlit corner of the Sedillo house. She patched the roof herself, hands confident. She got a text one day from her sister: "Heard you were a hero, sorry for doubting, maybe Thanksgiving at your place next year." Megan stared at the blinking cursor before typing back, "Let's see how brave you are with rattlesnakes." Then she set the phone down and watched the walnut tree outside the window drop its dark fruit onto the porch. In the end, it was never about easy money or simple revenge. It was about trust, the kind powerful enough to last after the worst secrets dried in the sun. And so, even when those you love most try to sell you out, the choice to do the right thing, especially when it costs you everything, remains yours alone. Some fires once lit burn forever. And in New Mexico, beneath the buzz of neon and the dust of broken promises, the truth sometimes waits for someone just stubborn enough to find it. If you've ever felt like you were the only one willing to look, take heart. Sometimes you're the only one who can. Days settled into a halting rhythm, strange, quiet, filled with the unfamiliar sense of being left alone. Megan expected reporters to swarm the Sedillo house, for old friends to call, for enemies hiding as relatives to press their luck. But nothing happened. News trucks came and went in a single afternoon. The legal team sent forms and updates by email. Her sister, suitably chastened, limited herself to apology emojis and memes of heroic women wielding paintbrushes. It was in these odd, empty mornings, with sunlight slicing into the kitchen through greasy window panes, that Megan finally allowed herself to touch what her father had left behind without fear. The footlocker was now locked inside the hall closet, and the remaining folders, those not surrendered to the authorities, lay spread across the battered kitchen table. Most were mundane, old research notes barely legible after years in storage, sketches of semiconductor arrangements, a page or two of calculations that made Megan's head hurt. But one notebook, her father's personal journal, spine cracked and smeared in the corners, called to her most evenings. She read it slowly, as if in translation. Entries about her childhood, bits of heartbreak after her mother left, coded observations about Matthew and Sherry's greed. There were lines that stopped her cold, like, "The best test of a person's character isn't how they act when they win, but when they lose. I hope Meg never forgets that, come what may." Some pages made her laugh, her dad trying to draw blueprints in the shape of comic strips, stick figures to represent enemies at the gate. And there, buried at the bottom, a faded Polaroid of a much younger Megan standing under the walnut tree, grinning with missing teeth, clutching a handmade wooden car. "Remember this day," her father had written on the back in blocky letters. She beat everyone, wouldn't take no for an answer. She studied her reflection in the old hallway mirror, hollow-eyed, certain she'd aged a decade in 2 weeks. But there, undeniably, was the stubborn chin, the straight cut of her father's jaw. One evening, knocking came on the door. It was the local sheriff, hat in hand, boots dusty. "Ms. Brooks, just checking in. Word is Harper's team is wrapping up the main investigation. Your uncle and aunt, they're not getting bail, I'm afraid." Megan folded her arms, not afraid, not sorry either. He grinned, nodding. "No one around here is either. Some folks are even saying it's about time a Brooks fixed up this place." His gaze swept the yard, taking in the sagging porch and the fresh row of nails shining in the new roofline. She hugged herself against the chill that crept in with the evening. "I'm trying, little by little." The sheriff hesitated. "By the way, there are some folks driving by slow, asking directions, but we're keeping an eye out. If anyone gives you trouble, just call." After he left, Megan felt a pressure ease, a sense of the community forming a circle, however thin, around her. The house itself revealed its needs a little at a time. Fixing up the back steps, Megan found a stash of letters stuffed behind a loose board. Most were junk mail, but a few were old postcards her father had never mailed, addressed to friends and colleagues in California and Maryland, even as far as Norway. The secrets were never very dramatic after all, just a record of one man's rough attempt to reach out to say, "I'm still here." Each day, she plotted a new way to push back entropy. Patch the gutter, caulk the window. That stubborn walnut tree, she noticed, was sprouting again after being cut back years ago. The tree had survived storms, lightning, the drought. Megan decided to let it grow wild. Her art, dusty and dormant for months, woke beneath her hands. The battered guitar shifted out of its case. The chords came grudging, but they came. She painted the living room yellow, the kitchen blue. On a whim, she framed one of her father's comic strip blueprints and hung it at the head of the stairs. One afternoon, Henderson appeared without calling first. He wore a faded denim jacket and brought a six-pack of Mexican Coke. "Thought you'd like the sugar," he said, setting the bottles on her step. "Didn't think you did house calls," she teased, stepping aside so he could enter. He eyed the improvements with appreciation. "You making this place a home or a fortress?" Megan laughed, the sound easier than she expected from her own throat. "Why not both? My father would approve." They sat on the porch and watched an orange sun bleed into the sandias. Henderson tapped the top of a Coke bottle. "Anyway, I didn't just come to check the paint job. Harper asked me to relay a message." He passed her a thick envelope. "Blue Ribbon Committee meeting next Thursday. They're finalizing what happens to the prototype. Even want your thoughts if you're up for it." She whistled low. "Let me guess, DOE in one corner, state reps in the other, lawyers in the middle." He winked. "Add a couple of lobbyists and a reporter or two, but yeah, they want a statement. The inheritor's intent for the legacy," as Harper put it. Megan stared at the envelope, thumbed the corner. "I can't help thinking how little Dad would have cared for anyone's committee." "Probably true," Henderson replied. "He cared about who got to use what he made, and that maybe, finally, someone honest got a say." She considered that. "I think he would have cared about who got to choose." As shadows crept across the porch, Henderson stood, stretching his back. "You got plans after all this, once the committees and the lawsuits die down?" She arched an eyebrow, thinking of opening a speakeasy and telling ghost stories. "Maybe painting for real again. Let my sister visit if she brings pie." "I'd buy a ticket," Henderson grinned. A beat of quiet fell between them before he added, "If you need anything, you know, hell with committees or lawyers, just call. Lots of people would stand up after what you did." Megan watched him depart, a small warmth lingering once he was gone. Not for the first time, the isolation of the last months felt eased, a bridge rebuilt, or at least a path sketched through dried grass. The committee meeting was less intimidating than she feared. Harper's presence was reassuring, sharp, organized, flanked by two engineers and a government handler with an unreadable face. They laid out the facts. The Pat would go to joint custody while security assessments finished. The prototype, the committee agreed, would not leave state custody. Megan's rights as heir gave her a voice but not an override. She could, however, recommend at least one scientist or public advocate to the oversight panel. "So what do you want, really?" Harper asked her bluntly once the formalities faded. "A portion of proceeds if it's commercialized, your name on the record." Megan surprised herself with the certainty in her voice. "I want safeguards, and I want my father's work to mean something outside the courtroom. Let it go to energy research, clean tech, universities, not weapons, not the military." The lead engineer, a lean woman with twins at home, nodded thoughtfully. "We can write that into the licensing language as best as the law allows." Harper raised an eyebrow. "You don't want money." "I want a little for the house," Megan admitted with a crooked smile. "But I want to sleep at night, even if it means less." Harper scribbled notes. "Done. You'll get named as technical advisor too. If we proceed with a foundation, you can sit on the board if you're interested." Driving back down the wide, empty highway to Sedillo, Megan felt lighter than she had in years. She rolled the windows down, howled along with her old mixtape, and reveled in not needing to check the rearview for anyone in pursuit. Thanksgiving arrived with a brittle cold that snapped branches and dusted the hills with frost. True to her promise, Megan invited her sister Paula, who showed up late, out of breath, bearing both a pie and a bottle of wine. "Still can't believe you're not famous yet," Paula muttered, scanning the house for burglars. "Give it time," Megan laughed, setting the table with mismatched plates. They ate turkey enchiladas, talked old memories, and toasted the fact that neither of them was in jail or foreclosure. Twice, Megan's phone buzzed, a reporter, then an attorney, but she let both calls go to voicemail. Over dishes, Paula leaned in close. What was really in that box? Don't give me the official story. Megan considered something terrifying and beautiful, like a lightning storm locked in metal. Paula shuddered. Dad was always a mystery. Yeah, Megan agreed softly, scraping the last of the sauce. But he left us more than headaches for once. After Paula left, Megan walked outside, breathing in the scent of cold, dry earth. The walnut tree glinted silvery black in the moonlight. She picked up a husk, rolled it in her hand, and felt its weight, heavy, obstinate, promising. Inside, she cleaned brushes and painted until her fingers ached. Each night, the Sedillo house grew less a shell and more a home. She painted her father's memory into the window casings, the cladding on the stairs, the steps leading down to the old root cellar, no longer a place of fear or secrets but a vault of hard-won truth. A winter storm swept in just before Christmas, rattling the battered shutters and churning the clouds above the hills. Megan woke one morning to the sound of persistent knocking, anxious, unfamiliar. Standing on her porch was an older man in park ranger's gear, tall, sun-baked, his hair the color of iron filings. Lamplight caught the badge pinned above his chest. "Ms. Brooks," he began without preamble. "Name S. Greer, I used to work with your father, heard you were holding down the old place." Megan, wary, kept the door half-closed, didn't expect visitors. He inclined his head. "I just wanted to say, what you did helped a lot of us sleep better. The lab crowd is grateful, not many would have done what you did." She relaxed a little, offering coffee, which he declined. Before leaving, he produced a blue folder. "He left this with me years back, said to only hand it over if you ever stood up to the wolves. Guess that time's arrived." She accepted it, hands trembling. Inside were photographs of her as a small child, notes about the Sedillo house's quirks, letters to friends, and a final, handwritten line. "There's always another storm. The trick is to plant something good before the rain." After he left, Megan tucked the folder away with her father's other papers. She walked outside as the first flakes of snow began winding down from the pewter sky. The porch boards, now solid beneath her feet, creaked with welcome rather than threat. She realized then that the house was no longer the last grim detritus of a collapsed family. It was an inheritance worth having, not for money, not for secrets, not for power, but because it had outlasted everything designed to break it. In spring, the newspapers finally tired of the Brooks family saga, moving on to newer scandals. Megan heard from Harper that the foundation was nearly formed, with a grant for local schools to promote science and ethics in research. She took up teaching weekend art classes at a nearby community center, laughing with children who didn't know or care about the fuss. Sometimes, in the evenings, she and Henderson would sit out under the walnut tree, drinking cold cokes, guitars balanced on their knees. Sometimes they played music, sometimes they talked, sometimes silence said more than either could. Seasons spun on. The battered footlocker, now repainted and sitting in the entryway, served as a coffee table. Inside, instead of blueprints and secrets, there were photos, postcards, and the errant wild things a new life collects: paint samples, guitar picks, the broken skeleton key that had started it all. Megan hung a sign above the door, hand-lettered on salvaged barn wood. "No more secrets, just stories." Every new friend who crossed her threshold smiled at the sign, its message simple and true. The last remnant of crisis was a dream that came every so often, her father's voice, low and careful. "The world turns, Meg, your life doesn't pause just because the past calls out. Forgive, forget, or bury it in walnut shells, just don't stop living." She woke from those dreams to the low, sweet hush of wind in the eaves and knew at last what survival felt like. Sunlight, paint under the nails, roots clawing deep. And out on the old porch, as dusk fell and stars began to pierce the bruised blue of the New Mexico sky, Megan Brooks, artist, daughter, keeper of the stubborn house, looked forward at last, not back. Because some gifts are heavy, some secrets dangerous. But the future, once you claim it for your own, waits with both arms open, ready for whatever you're bold enough to bring.